I still remember the sound of my father's breath when he turned toward me and said, "So you stole your sister's bank card and humiliated her?" He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask why I was crying. He didn't even look at the bruise on my arm. He simply believed the lie. And that moment became the beginning of everything I uncovered next. The room was full of chatter and laughter, but everything stopped the moment Joomi burst in, her face red with anger. She pointed at Danny, shouting that she had stolen her bank card and tried to pay for drinks in front of all her friends. Everyone stared at Danny, their eyes sharp and judging, while her hands shook so badly she could barely hold herself up. She opened her mouth to explain, but no one let her speak. Her father's voice cut through, cold and firm. He told her to apologize or leave. Danny's heart sank. She felt a hot wave of shame rush over her as she turned and walked out, leaving the room behind. Her cheeks burned, tears welled up, and every step felt heavier than the last. She didn't understand why everyone believed Joomi without question, and the pain of being blamed for something she didn't do stabbed deeper than she had ever felt before. She felt small and visible, and betrayed, standing alone outside the noise of the party, trying to hold back her sobs while the laughter and chatter continued inside without her. Danny closed her door and sank onto her bed, hugging her knees. She kept thinking about what had happened at the party, over and over, trying to understand how everyone could believe Joomi so easily. She hadn't touched the card, never even thought about it, but her father and everyone else treated her like she was a thief. Her chest felt tight, and tears blurred her vision. As she wiped them away, her eyes fell on the family tablet lying on the desk. Her mother always forgot to lock it, and for some reason, Danny opened it. The banking app was open, and a notification caught her attention. A withdrawal she didn't recognize was listed, and it wasn't from her account. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the history, and her heart started to beat faster. Someone had taken money from Joomi's account before the party, long before anyone even knew about it. The dates didn't lie. The more she looked, the more she realized that Joomi's story didn't make sense at all. Danny felt a mix of fear and hope. Fear because whoever did this was clever, and hope because maybe she had finally found the first clue that could prove she wasn't guilty. Her mind raced as she traced the withdrawals, noticing patterns and small details that didn't fit. Each line of numbers and dates felt like a secret message, pointing to the truth Joomi had tried to hide. She leaned back against the wall, feeling both determined and scared. For the first time since the party, Danny felt like she had a way to fight back, a chance to show that she hadn't done anything wrong. She didn't shout or cry this time. Instead, she stayed quiet, letting her mind piece together the puzzle. The realization hit her slowly, like a wave building in the ocean. Someone else had drained Joomi's money, and Danny had nothing to do with it. She stared at the screen, her eyes wide, knowing that this small discovery could change everything. The anger, betrayal, and humiliation she felt at the party started to turn into determination. She whispered to herself, almost like a promise, that she would find out the full truth, no matter what it took, and make sure everyone knew she was innocent. For the first time in days, Danny felt a spark of control, a small light in the darkness that had surrounded her since that terrible night. Danny stayed up late that night, her eyes fixed on the tablet screen. She started looking at all the withdrawals from Joomi's account, going back months, one by one. Each transaction led to the same hidden phone number, a number that didn't belong to anyone in the family. Her heart raced as she copied it and typed it into a search engine, hoping to find some clue. The result made her freeze. The number belonged to a man who had a reputation for taking advantage of young women with money. Danny's stomach dropped. Suddenly, everything made sense. Joomi hadn't been yelling at her because her card was empty. She had been panicking because this man had stolen all her money, and she didn't know what to do. Danny felt a mix of shock and pity. She hadn't expected to uncover something this big, something so secret. She thought about how carefully Joomi must have hidden it, trying to keep everyone from finding out. And yet, in her panic, Joomi had thrown Danny under the bus, making her the scapegoat for a crime she didn't commit. Danny leaned back in her chair, trying to steady her breathing. The more she looked at the patterns of the withdrawals, the more obvious it became that Joomi's boyfriend had planned everything carefully. He had been taking small amounts first, then larger ones, always making sure it would look like Danny had done something wrong if anyone looked. Danny felt a spark of anger, not just at the man, but at her sister for lying so completely. But underneath the anger, there was a clear thought forming in her mind. She had proof now. The secret Joomi had worked so hard to hide was right in front of her. And Danny knew she could use it to show the truth. She didn't feel like yelling or crying anymore. Instead, she felt sharp and focused, like a detective uncovering a hidden truth. Danny stared at the tablet, imagining how she would reveal everything carefully, without giving Joomi a chance to twist the story again. She realized that this was bigger than money. It was about trust, lies, and finally taking control of a situation that had made her feel powerless. For the first time since the party, Danny felt a quiet strength building inside her. She had found the secret she wasn't supposed to see, and now she had a choice. Stay quiet and let the lies continue, or act wisely and show everyone the real truth. She clenched her fists and whispered to herself that she wouldn't let anyone hurt her or accuse her falsely ever again. This discovery was her first real step toward justice, and she knew she had to follow it carefully, piece by piece, until the whole story came out that Joomi's panic had taken over her completely. She knew if anyone found out the truth about her boyfriend stealing all the money, she would be in trouble, and her carefully hidden secret would come crashing down. She couldn't risk that, not with her friends, not with her family. So she decided to act fast. Danny had always been the quiet, obedient one, the daughter who never complained and always followed the rules. Joomi knew their father would believe anything negative about Danny without question. That thought gave her an idea, a way to protect herself. She carefully planned the scene at the restaurant, choosing the busiest night when her friends and family were there. She made sure to bring up the bank card in front of everyone, screaming, accusing Danny of trying to use it and finding it empty. Her voice was loud and angry, full of panic disguised as rage, and it drew everyone's attention immediately. Danny froze, caught off guard, her hands trembling as all eyes turned toward her. The father, the relatives, even Danny's closest friends stared at her like she was guilty. Joomi watched closely, feeling a small sense of relief as Danny stammered, trying to explain herself, but no one listened. Joomi had counted on that. She knew the louder she got, the more everyone would focus on Danny's supposed guilt, and the less anyone would notice the real story behind the empty card. Every detail was calculated. The timing, the words, the accusations, all designed to make Danny look bad while Joomi appeared as the innocent victim, confused and upset at her sister's supposed betrayal. She wanted the humiliation to stick, to make sure Danny walked out of the restaurant feeling ashamed and powerless, exactly how she had planned. And it worked. Danny's face turned red, her chest tightened, and she felt the weight of the room pressing down on her. She had never felt so small, so wrongly judged. Joomi's trap had done exactly what she wanted. It distracted everyone from the real theft, made Danny the target, and gave her the cover she needed to hide her panic and protect her secret. While Danny's humiliation played out in front of the family and friends, Joomi quietly breathed a little easier, thinking she had escaped the consequences, unaware that Danny's quiet observation and growing determination were slowly starting to piece everything together. This was supposed to be Joomi's perfect plan, the trap that would save her, and for a moment, it seemed like it had worked perfectly. But Danny had already noticed things that no one else had, and the trap that seemed so clever was about to unravel in ways Joomi could never imagine. Danny sat quietly in her room, her mind sharp and focused for the first time since the restaurant incident. She didn't yell or cry anymore. She knew that emotional outbursts would only give Joomi more power and make everyone doubt her even more. Instead, she opened the tablet and carefully printed out every transaction log, every screenshot, and every phone number confirmation she had found. Each piece of evidence was neatly organized, a clear chain that could prove exactly what had happened. The house felt colder than usual, quiet in a way that made her feel both alone and determined. Danny took a deep breath and reminded herself to stay calm. She didn't need anyone's approval to do the right thing, and she didn't need to be dramatic. This was about the truth, and the truth didn't need shouting. It only needed to be shown clearly. She thought about Joomi, imagining her sister's smug smile and the panic hidden underneath it. Joomi had believed she could get away with blaming Danny, but Danny now had all the proof she needed. She planned carefully, deciding not to confront Joomi in front of the whole family, where words could be twisted and accusations could rebound on her. Instead, she picked a quiet time, a neutral place, where no one could interrupt or misinterpret what she said. Danny even rehearsed in her head how she would speak, what she would show first, and how she would stay composed no matter what Joomi tried. She felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement, knowing that soon the whole lie would unravel. She remembered how humiliated and powerless she had felt during the restaurant scene, and she promised herself that this time, she would be in control. Danny imagined holding the evidence in her hands, seeing Joomi's expression change as the truth became impossible to deny. She didn't need to yell or fight. She only needed to be clear, patient, and confident. As she looked around her quiet room, she realized that for the first time, she had a plan that could set things right. The fear that had held her for days started to fade, replaced by a quiet strength. Danny whispered to herself that justice didn't have to be loud, that calm and careful action could do more than anger ever could. She felt a small smile form, knowing that Joomi had underestimated her completely. Soon, everything would be revealed, and Danny would finally show that she had been truthful all along. The idea of holding the truth like a shield, untouchable and undeniable, gave her courage. She felt ready to face her sister, her father, and the rest of the family, not as the humiliated girl they had judged, but as someone who had discovered the truth and was prepared to reveal it carefully, step by step, without letting anyone twist it. Sunday lunch was busy as usual, with everyone chatting and passing plates around, but Danny felt a strange calm as she walked into the dining room holding the stack of documents. The chatter stopped almost immediately when her father noticed the papers in her hands. Danny didn't shout or cry. He simply walked to the table and carefully laid the evidence in front of him, one by one. There were transaction logs, screenshots, and the phone number links she had traced, everything organized so there could be no misunderstanding. She looked at her father and spoke slowly, clearly, explaining every withdrawal, every date, and how all the transactions were connected to Joomi's secret boyfriend. She didn't accuse with anger, she just presented the truth as it was, letting the evidence speak for itself. Joomi's face went pale, her confident posture collapsing as she realized Danny had all the proof. She opened her mouth to argue, but no sound came out. All the planning, all the lies she had used to protect herself, suddenly felt useless. Their father, who had been stern and angry at Danny for what he thought was theft, froze. His expression shifted from anger to disbelief, then to fear. The realization hit him hard. He had punished the wrong daughter again. All those times he had trusted Joomi over Danny, all the accusations he had believed without checking, had led to this moment. He looked from the evidence to Danny's calm face, and for the first time, he seemed to understand how wrong he had been. The whole room felt heavy with tension, and everyone else watched in silence, sensing the storm that had been quietly brewing. Danny stayed steady, her hands resting on the table, her eyes firm but not angry. She didn't need to shout or beg to be believed. The truth was undeniable, and she let it sink in. Joomi shrank back, unable to explain herself, realizing that her plan to humiliate Danny had completely failed. Danny's father finally spoke, his voice low and trembling, asking questions he should have asked long ago. The fear in his eyes told Danny he finally understood the mistake he had made, and that this time, the truth could no longer be ignored. Danny felt a quiet satisfaction, not in revenge, but in finally being seen for who she really was, in front of everyone who had doubted her. The storm had begun, and this time, Danny was at the center, strong, calm, and in control. Joomi's face was pale, and her confident mask had completely fallen off. She opened her mouth to lie again, trying to twist the story, but Danny stayed calm, holding her gaze steady. Every attempt Joomi made to defend herself sounded weaker and weaker as the evidence lay in front of everyone on the table. Danny's father, still holding the documents, looked at her with a mix of shock and disappointment. Joomi's hands trembled, and she fumbled for her phone, hoping somehow to save herself. Then, her phone buzzed loudly, and the screen lit up with a message from the very number Danny had traced. Before Joomi could hide it, the number flashed clearly for everyone to see. Her father answered the call, his hands shaking slightly. The man on the other end laughed, a cold, mocking laugh that made the room go completely silent. "She thought I loved her," he said casually. "I only loved her card." The words hit Joomi like a wave, and she froze in place. The lie she had built so carefully crumbled in an instant. Her knees gave out, and she collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her face. She begged Danny, her voice desperate and broken, to forgive her and not expose everything to the family, to spare her from humiliation. But Danny stood still, unmoving, her eyes fixed on her sister. She could feel the weight of every insult Joomi had thrown at her, every shove, every false accusation, and every moment she had been unfairly blamed. The anger inside Danny didn't flare into shouting. Instead, it turned into a quiet, unshakable strength. She remembered all the nights of humiliation, the whispers, the stares, and the unfair punishment. All of it had led to this moment, the truth standing in front of everyone, undeniable and clear. Danny's heart beat steadily, and though her chest felt heavy with everything that had happened, she refused to give Joomi the satisfaction of seeing her broken. Joomi's tears, her pleading, and her fear of exposure only reinforced the lesson Danny had learned long ago. Sometimes the people who are closest to you can betray you, and justice doesn't always have to be loud to be felt. Danny's silence spoke louder than any words could. She let the truth settle, letting everyone witness that Joomi's web of lies had been undone. She didn't rush to gloat, she didn't need to. The man's confession had done that for her, and Joomi's breakdown was the final proof of the manipulation and deceit Danny had endured. In that quiet, tense room, Danny felt a deep sense of victory, not cruel, not loud, but undeniable. The sister who had humiliated her and blamed her for a crime she didn't commit was finally exposed, and Danny's strength, calmness, and unwavering resolve had turned the tables completely. This moment marked the shift, from being the blamed and silenced daughter to the one who held the truth, quietly but completely in her hands. Danny took a deep breath, letting the tension in the room settle around her. She didn't raise her voice or yell at Joomi, even though every part of her wanted to. Instead, she looked at her family calmly and spoke with steady confidence. She told them that she would no longer be their scapegoat, that she would not accept being blamed for things she didn't do just to make someone else look innocent. Her words were quiet but firm, carrying a weight that no one could ignore. She explained that from now on, she needed her own space, her own room, and her own responsibilities, the things she had been unfairly burdened with for years. Danny wanted to live on her own terms, without being pushed into problems or guilt that weren't hers. She also made it clear that she would control her own finances. No one could take advantage of her, manipulate her, or use her money without her permission ever again. Her father, who had been silent, listened carefully. The guilt of punishing the wrong daughter, the fear of what had almost been hidden, and the shock of seeing his youngest daughter stand so strong left him speechless. He nodded slowly, agreeing to everything Danny said without argument. The room was quiet, but Danny could feel the shift. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was complete. She wasn't looking for revenge in the way people usually think. She didn't want to embarrass Joomi or punish her physically. Her justice was different. It was about taking control of her life, protecting herself, and making sure no one could use her again. For Danny, this calm, firm assertion of her boundaries was far more powerful than any shouting match could have been. She felt lighter, freer, and stronger than she had ever felt before. Her family had to face the fact that she would no longer be manipulated, blamed, or silenced. Even Joomi, who was still trembling from her own exposure, had to see that Danny's strength wasn't about anger. It was about control, clarity, and self-respect. In that quiet moment, Danny realized something important. Real justice doesn't have to be loud or cruel. It can be simple, steady, and unshakable. By standing firm, claiming her space, and taking charge of her life, Danny had finally created a form of justice that no one could take away. It wasn't about punishment. It was about freedom, dignity, and showing that she would never again be the girl who was blamed for everything. The family had to accept it, and for the first time, Danny felt completely in charge of her life. After the confrontation with her family, Danny felt a mix of relief and determination. She knew she couldn't let the humiliation and betrayal she had suffered go to waste. All the nights she spent crying, all the fear and confusion, had taught her something important. She had a voice, a mind, and the ability to turn even the worst pain into something meaningful. She decided to start an online page to help young women who had been manipulated, used, or blamed unfairly, just like she had been. At first, she wasn't sure if anyone would listen, but she spoke from the heart. She shared stories of betrayal, explained how to protect finances, and gave simple advice on how to stay calm and strong when others tried to drag them down. Danny's voice was calm, steady, and full of clarity. She didn't shout or exaggerate. She explained things in a way that made sense, and people felt like she understood them. Slowly, followers started to join her page. Messages began pouring in from girls and young women thanking her for advice, telling her that her tips had helped them avoid being tricked, and that her story had given them courage. Danny realized that her own pain had become her power. The humiliation and lies that had hurt her so much were now the very tools she was using to help others. She often repeated a phrase that became her signature advice. When someone lies about you, don't fight louder, bring the truth. This simple idea resonated with everyone who followed her, and it spread quickly. People shared her posts, recommended her page to friends, and even invited her to speak on small online seminars about financial awareness and self-respect. Danny felt proud, not just because of the numbers growing, but because she was making a difference. Every message she received reminded her that the betrayal she had suffered didn't have to define her. She could define herself through strength, clarity, and action. What had once been a source of pain, the lies, the humiliation, the false accusations, had turned into a reason for her to rise. She knew that by helping others, she was also healing herself. Danny realized that power didn't always come from fighting or punishing others. Sometimes it came from quietly standing tall, showing the truth, and using your experience to protect and inspire others. The more she shared, the stronger she felt. Every post, every tip, every story she told was a reminder that she had survived, learned, and turned her suffering into something that could uplift others. Her page wasn't just about money or advice. It was about courage, honesty, and reclaiming one's life after being wronged. Danny had taken the worst moment of her life and transformed it into a source of light for herself and for so many others who needed it. Months passed and life slowly settled into a new rhythm for Danny. She focused on her page, her goals, and her own independence, building a life that no one could touch or control. One quiet afternoon, there was a soft knock on her door. Danny looked up to see her father standing there, holding a small envelope in his hands. His face was serious, but there was a hint of hesitation, as if he wasn't sure she would even listen. He stepped forward and handed her the envelope without a word. Danny opened it carefully. Inside was a card, simple and unassuming, but the words written on it carried weight she hadn't expected. It wasn't money, and it wasn't a gift. It was a handwritten apology. Her father admitted that he had failed her, that he had believed lies too quickly, and that he had allowed Joomi's manipulation to go unchecked for years. Danny felt a rush of emotions, surprise, relief, and a quiet satisfaction, but she didn't rush to forgive him. She put the card down and looked at him with calm eyes. She knew forgiveness didn't have to come instantly, and it didn't erase what had happened. What she did accept, however, was something far more important. Her strength was no longer defined by who hurt her, or how badly she had been treated. Danny had learned to fight quietly, to rise steadily, and to reclaim her voice without letting anger or pain destroy her. She had built her life carefully, piece by piece, and that life was her real victory. Her revenge wasn't a public scene or a loud confrontation. It wasn't about embarrassing Joomi or proving anyone wrong with shouting or chaos. Her revenge was in the calm, steady life she had created, a life of independence, confidence, and purpose that no one could take from her. Danny smiled faintly, feeling a sense of peace that had been impossible before. She had survived humiliation, lies, and betrayal, but she had come out stronger, wiser, and unshakable. The apology card from her father was small, but it didn't change her past, it only acknowledged it. Danny realized that the true power she had gained wasn't in punishing anyone, but in building herself up, quietly and completely, after they tried to silence her. She had proven something to herself more than anyone else. That no one could define her worth, control her voice, or take away her life's direction. She held the card for a moment, then set it aside. Her eyes turned toward the future she had already started to shape, a future where she was unstoppable, respected, and free. The life she had built was her ultimate answer to all the lies, betrayal, and pain. And that life was louder than any words could ever be. If you felt this story, follow for more powerful twists. Want part 2 or another story like this? Comment more. Hit follow so you don't miss the next shocking story. Drop a comment if you want the full series. Like, share, and follow for daily viral stories. If this story gave you chills, tap follow right now. Follow me for more emotional and life-changing stories. What do you think Danny should do next? Comment below. Save this story. You'll want to read it again. Tag someone who needs to hear this lesson.